I'm Tyler Silvestri, the Secretary for Academic Governance at Michigan State University, and I'm here to discuss this book, Robert's Rules of Order, as well as MSU's bylaws for academic governance. The bylaws say that on any procedural question not answered in the bylaws themselves, we have to turn to Robert's Rules for answers. But before we jump in, it's worth considering why we should bother with rules at all. Couldn't we just take turns talking, making our points, and reach the best decision, without things like motions or chairs? The short answer is probably not. People in deliberative groups are prone to going on tangents, talking for too long, and monopolizing debate to the exclusion of other members. While some view rules of order as stodgy, old-fashioned things that get in the way of decision-making, the purpose of parliamentary procedure is to keep meetings on track and fair. When everyone knows the rules, everyone can play by them, and everyone knows what to expect. Of course, no one knows all the rules in this 649-page monster. At least 80% of them are used less than 20% of the time. But there are a few fundamentals that we can all learn quickly to make meetings faster and fairer. With that, let's get started. Before your first meeting even starts, there are two things to understand. First, you should know what the role of the chairperson is. The chair's job is to enforce the rules, designate whose turn it is to talk, and to keep the meeting running on track. The chair of Faculty Senate this year is Jennifer Johnson, and the chair of University Council is President Sam Stanley. The chair does not generally make motions or vote, except in a couple circumstances, like when a vote is by secret ballot, or when the chair's vote would affect the outcome. Only on rare occasions should the chair appear anything but neutral on any issue. The other concept you should understand is quorum. 100% attendance is rare in almost every organization. But it would be seriously problematic if a small portion of the body, whether it's faculty senate, university council, whatever, made decisions that bind everyone else. To stop that from happening, the bylaws and Robert's rules require that there be a quorum, that is half of the voting membership plus one, present for any actions to be taken. This is why it's crucial that you attend meetings or send a qualified designee in your place. Now, Robert's Rules of Order allows bodies to adopt rules that conflict with Robert's rules, as long as they don't violate the organization's bylaws. And way back in March 1976, Professor Jack Bass proposed such a rule, and it's stuck around ever since. The rule, which is called the Bass Quorum Rule, says that if a quorum hasn't been reached 10 minutes after the meeting was supposed to be scheduled, then 40% of the members will be enough to approve the agenda and the minutes, as well as to have discussions about the items on the agenda. You might be wondering how things get on the agenda in the first place. There are two ways. The ordinary way is to email suggestions to acadgov@msu.edu for consideration by the steering committee, which is made up of 4 students, the chairs of each of the 7 standing committees, 5 faculty members elected at large, and the provost. The other way is to do it at the meeting, to add something to the agenda before it's adopted. There's been some confusion on this point in the past, but I want to be very clear. You are absolutely allowed to add things to the agenda from the floor. However, note that it will often be easiest for everyone if you do the steering committee route. But if you don't, and you know you're going to amend the agenda at the meeting, to send notice of your intention to do so to my office at acadgov@msu.edu so that we can have things in writing and we all sort of know what's coming. Once the chair calls the meeting to order, everyone is expected to quiet down and begin conducting themselves according to the rules of order. After that, the agenda is presented, potentially amended, and then approved. The draft minutes, which are prepared by me and sent out a week in advance, are discussed and voted on. Then key figures like the president, provost, and chairperson give remarks and take questions. After that, we move to any unfinished business from the last meeting. After that, we move to new business. This is what it's all about. Here is where we deal with the things that people wanted put on the agenda for action or discussion by the body. For these purposes, I'm going to use Faculty Senate as the body in question. Now, the basic tool we use to do things at meetings is the motion. A motion is a formal proposal by a member that Faculty Senate do something. Obviously, there will be times, such as when the agenda item is discussion of some big societal issue, where Structured discussion led by the chair is more appropriate than the actual formal motion process. But as soon as a member wants any action to be taken, including expressing the official opinion of Faculty Senate, they should make a motion. A person who wants to make a motion waits until the previous person is done speaking, raises their hand, or in the world of Zoom otherwise indicates to the chair they want to speak, whether that's through the chat or on the raise hand function, sort of however the chair says she wants it done. And they wait until the chair recognizes them, which the chair may do by saying their name, nodding at them, or if it's clear who's being addressed, simply saying, go ahead. Once a person is recognized, they should state their motion clearly and succinctly. Whenever possible, motions should be submitted in writing, including in the chat on Zoom, and the chair has the power to require that motions be submitted in writing. The motion should begin with the words, I move that, or I move to, never I motion that. After the motion is made, the mover should stop talking. This is not the time to explain why something is a good idea. That comes later. Motions that bring some new business before Faculty Senate are called main motions, and they require a second. Any voting member can second a motion, and they don't need to wait to be recognized to do so. Just sort of call out second, raise your hand. The chair will sometimes ask if there's a second, but it's okay if you beat her to it. Seconding a motion doesn't necessarily mean that the person seconding the motion agrees with its substance. It just means that they want to have it discussed. If a motion fails to get a seconder, which almost never happens, that indicates that Faculty Senate doesn't think considering the subject of the motion is a good use of time, and the motion is dead and cannot be reintroduced at the same meeting. If there's a second, the chair then states the question. This means the chair reads the exact language of the motion aloud. This is done so that there is no question about exactly what is being voted on. This is also the chance for the chair to announce her ruling that, for some procedural reason, the motion is not in order or appropriate for consideration at this time. This rarely happens. Here's an example of a motion being made correctly. All right, we move now to item 7.4 on the agenda, proposed resolution on ID cards. Mr. Chair. Dr. Green, you have the floor. I move that Faculty Senate adopt a resolution reading, it is the opinion of Faculty Senate that the picture on MSU ID cards should be changed from the Beaumont Tower to a picture of the Sparty statue. Second. It is moved and seconded that Faculty Senate adopt a resolution reading, it is the opinion of Faculty Senate that the picture on MSU ID cards should be changed from the Beaumont Tower to a picture of the Sparty statue. Is there any discussion, beginning with the mover, Dr. Green? Here's an example of a motion being made incorrectly. All right, we move now to item 7.4 on the agenda, proposed resolution on ID cards. Mr. Chair. Dr. Green, you have the floor. Since the dawn of humankind, people have wanted ID cards with statues on them, not buildings. Moreover, I do not like the Beaumont Tower very much at all. It has the wrong Roman numeral for 4 on it. That's true. Plus, the Sparty statue is more widely known. For that reason, I move that Faculty Senate adopt a resolution reading, it is the opinion of Faculty Senate that the picture on MSU ID cards should be changed from the Beaumont Tower to a picture of the Sparty statue. That motion was made incorrectly because the mover gave his reasons for making the motion before it was seconded. This can lead to people tuning out and not hearing what the actual motion being made is. It's also important that at least 2 members support discussing a subject before it's discussed. If you're worried about your motion not getting a second, team up with another faculty senator before the meeting to make sure you'll have support. Having said that, motions are almost always seconded as a courtesy. In my 4 years in academic governance, I've never seen a motion fail to be seconded. Once a motion has been made, seconded, and stated by the chair, it's time for debate. That is, discussion about the merits of a motion. The person who made the motion has a one-time preference for speaking first. The default rule is that each person can speak twice on any given motion for no more than 10 minutes each time. However, this rule can be changed, either permanently or just for a certain issue, by a 2/3 vote. You could also move to suspend the rules, which requires a 2/3 vote, to give a specific speaker an extra 2 minutes or something if their time elapsed but they were just getting to the good part. Note that you cannot yield your time to someone else the way that they do in Congress, except that you can choose to let others ask you questions on your time. Only members of Faculty Senate have the right to participate in debate. If it would be helpful for a non-member to weigh in, there must be a motion to give that non-member voice before they can do so. Similarly, only voting members of Faculty Senate can make motions at all. Now, to be given the floor to speak, simply raise your hand the way you would if you were making a motion, and wait to be recognized by the chair. There are a couple important principles about debate to remember. First, keep in mind that the chair doesn't have to call on people in the order they seek to be recognized, although she generally should. If, for example, 6 people who have already spoken once raise their hands, and a 7th person who hasn't spoken on the issue at all raises their hand, that 7th person has preference. Relatedly, in the interest of encouraging debate, if the chair knows how certain members seeking recognition feel about an issue, she can alternate between supporters and opponents as she sees fit. Next, remember that all debate has to be germane to the motion at hand. If your comments don't address whether the motion on the floor should be adopted, the chair can rule you are out of order and require you to stop speaking. It's also critical to remember that Faculty Senate debates issues, not personalities. Attacking someone's reasoning is encouraged. It's what deliberative assemblies are about. But attacking someone themselves is forbidden. For example, Robert's Rules says that you can say that you believe there is evidence that the previous speaker was mistaken, but you cannot say that their statement was false, nor can you call them a liar or a fraud or anything similar, or really question their motives at all. It's about their reasoning, not why they might think that reasoning. There are a number of rules that seem kind of weirdly formal that are designed to keep debates centered on issues rather than people. For example, everything said in debate should be addressed to the chair, not the person speaking. It's also best to refer to officers by their titles and members by something like the previous speaker rather than their names, even when asking them questions. Here's an example of healthy Robert's Rules approved debate. It is moved and seconded that Faculty Senate adopt a resolution reading, "It is the opinion of Faculty Senate that the picture on MSU ID cards should be changed from the Beaumont Tower to a picture of the Sparty statue." Is there any discussion, beginning with the mover, Dr. Green? No, thank you. Mr. Chair? Dr. Bluth? We've had the Beaumont Tower on the ID cards ever since the university started in 1855. We should not change it now. Mr. Chair? Professor Peralta? I've reason to believe that the previous speaker is mistaken, given that we did not have ID cards with pictures on them until the late 1970s, although it has indeed been the Beaumont Tower ever since. Mr. Chair? Dr. Richards? Mr. Chair, would the previous speaker care to explain how he knows the history of MSU ID cards? Professor Peralta? My first on-campus job was as a student in the ID office, and I was there when we made the switch. Sometimes debate drags on and on and on. There's a common misconception that any member can shout, "Call the question!" in the middle of debate and force the vote to be taken immediately. This is simply not true. In fact, the tool to close debate is the motion for the previous question. If someone wants to close debate, they should raise their hand and seek to be recognized like anyone else. Once recognized, they should say, "I move the previous question." The motion requires a second, like other motions. However, it is not itself debatable. So the chair will then immediately call for a vote on whether to close debate. If passed by a 2/3 vote, debate is closed, and the chair will move to getting the vote ready on the issue itself. Once no one else wants to contribute to debate, the chair puts the question to the body by saying, "Is there any further debate?" or "Are you ready for the question?" This is essentially saying, "Last call for speaking on this issue." If no one wants to speak, the chair ordinarily states the motion again and asks for all those supporting the motion to say aye. She'll then ask for all those opposing it to say no. Then the chair will use her judgment to determine which side had more support. In the COVID-19 era, the chair may also ask for members to raise their hands or use a previously distributed online tool to vote. Then the chair announces the result of the vote by saying either the ayes have it and the motion is adopted, or the noes have it and the motion is lost. And then saying, either way, the next item of business is, and moving on. The chair should not call for abstentions, and abstentions are not counted. An abstention vote is an oxymoron, as abstaining is literally refusing to vote. They are therefore not considered in determining whether a given vote succeeds or fails. Sometimes, members might feel that the motion would be better if it were worded differently, or if it did something else entirely. Amendments to a motion are made via subsidiary motions. Amendments must be germane and cannot fundamentally be about something else. For example, if the original motion was to make yellow the official color of Faculty Senate, an amendment adding the words "and endorse the idea of a fall break" would be out of order. But otherwise, there's a lot of room for amendment. They're made by the same process as ordinary motions. The period of debate that accompanies an amendment is limited to the question of whether the amendment should be adopted, not the original motion itself. Many of you have probably heard the term friendly amendment. From this moment on, pretend you have not. The idea is that a member offers a so-called friendly amendment that is in the spirit of the original motion, which the person who made the motion can then accept without debate. This is wrong. This is nothing. There's absolutely no such thing as a friendly amendment under Robert's Rules of Order. Doesn't exist. Once a motion has been made and seconded, it is no longer the property of the mover, but of Faculty Senate as a whole. Any amendment, friendly or hostile, therefore requires a majority vote. Before a motion is seconded, however, the mover can withdraw their motion and make a different one. Here's what a proper amendment looks like. And I was there when we made the switch. Mr. Chair, Professor Parker, I move to strike out the words "the Sparty statue" in the resolution and insert the words "Spartan Stadium" in their place. Second. It has been moved and seconded that the resolution be amended by striking out the words "the Sparty statue" and inserting the words "Spartan Stadium" in their place. Is there any discussion, beginning with Professor Parker? People like Spartan Stadium better. It is more recognizable. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question is on whether to amend the resolution by striking out the words "the Sparty statue" and inserting the words "Spartan Stadium" in their place. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. No. The ayes have it and the motion is adopted. The question is whether to adopt a resolution. Obviously, following this process for every single item on the agenda would be time-consuming. Fortunately, the chair can ask that uncontroversial items, such as approving draft minutes, be passed by unanimous consent. Once a motion is made, or even before a motion is made, the chair can say, "Is there any objection to approving the draft minutes?" Wait a few seconds, and if there is no objection, say, "Without objection, the draft minutes are approved." But if even a single member objects, the regular motion, second, debate process must be followed. And it's okay if you object. You're not a jerk. If you have a serious, well-stated, germane objection that you want discussed, do it. Absolutely. Hopefully you've learned a lot about rules of order and how meetings are supposed to be run. If during a meeting you feel that the rules aren't being followed, you can raise a point of order. In urgent circumstances, you can even do this when someone else is speaking. To raise a point of order, simply call out "point of order." The chair will recognize you and say the member will state their point of order, at which point you will explain what rule you think is being violated. The chair will either rule that your point of order is well taken, if she agrees with it, or not well taken if she disagrees. If a majority of the body disagrees with the chair, a member can appeal the chair's decision and overturn it by a majority vote. There's much more to learn about the bylaws and Robert's Rules of Order, but you've sat through too much of me talking already. Please always feel free to contact me at acadgov@msu.edu with any questions about academic governance, procedural or otherwise. I'll leave you with this example of a motion going through the process of being adopted, complete with an amendment, a point of order, and a motion to end debate. Mr. Chair, Dr. Richards, I move that tortoises no longer be allowed in Faculty Senate meetings. Second. It has been moved and seconded that tortoises no longer be allowed in faculty senate meetings. Is there any discussion, beginning with Dr. Richards? Tortoises are extremely distracting, both for the members with the tortoises and the members looking at the tortoises. I believe that we will get a great deal more done if we were to rid ourselves of tortoise-related distractions. Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair? Professor Peralta, am I correct in assuming you will speak in opposition to the motion? You are correct. Then you are recognized. Thank you. I very much like having tortoises at the meetings. I think they add a pleasant ambiance to things. Dr. Bluth, you sought to be recognized? Yes. I'm inclined to think that any ambiance the previous speaker suggested is added by the presence of tortoises is outweighed by their tendency to distract. Professor Peralta. George, you are clearly just jealous that I have a... Point of order. The member will state his point of order. The previous speaker is out of order because his comment was directed toward another member rather than the chair, and because it questioned the other member's motives. The member's point of order is well taken because remarks must be directed toward the chair and avoid questioning members' motives. Professor Peralta is admonished to comply with the rules. My apologies. Mr. Chair, I just don't see the problem given that we're having remote meetings now. Mr. Chair. Dr. Green, I move to add a comma and the words either in person or remote after the word meetings. Second. It has been moved and seconded to add a comma and the words either in person or remote after the word meetings. The motion would therefore be to no longer allow tortoises in faculty senate meetings, either in person or remote. Is there any discussion, beginning with Dr. Green? It seems wise to make it clear that the ban should apply in both situations, as the previous version left it murky. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the amendment say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. No. The ayes have it and the amendment is adopted. The motion on the floor now is to no longer allow tortoises in faculty senate meetings, either in person or remote. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Chair. Dr. Bluth. I move the previous question. Second. It is moved and seconded to vote on the previous question, thereby ending debate. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? No. There are 2/3 in the affirmative, and the previous question is ordered. The question is now on the adoption of the motion to no longer allow tortoises in faculty senate meetings, either in person or remote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? No. The noes have it, and the motion is lost. Tortoises are still allowed at faculty senate meetings. The next item of business